of the United States? No. And it was never more important. You honor the legendary Dr. Bob today and his wife. You pay tribute to many others during the course of these 3 days. The fact that people like Dr. Hoenlein are involved is a testament to the significance, to the standing, to the importance of CUFI, as he is a message to you of the importance that somebody like this is associated with. The world is a very complex place. It's going through tremendous changes, so rapid that sometimes it's hard to discern. This year marks a lot of anniversaries, 25 years since the end of the Cold War. Wow. And yet we see the emergence of new rivalries. Smaller powers seeking caliphates, seeking hegemony. When we thought when the Cold War ended that we have an era of peace, and what it ushered in was quite the opposite. We were told there would be a new world order, and what emerged was old world disorder. That the world looks more like the 19th century than the 21st century. That we see irredentist movements, we see old isms rising again that we thought had been relegated to the dustbin of history. Antisemitism, prime amongst them. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the repeal of the odious Zionism is racism resolution by the United Nations. That resolution was the mother of the BDS movement. It is the mother of the rise of anti-Semitism. It is the rise of the efforts to delegitimize Israel. And its repeal was not enough because it wasn't a heartfelt repeal. It was a motion passed by the United Nations. But the poison it is used into the system remains. So we have to use this 25th anniversary to say, just as we beat Zionism, racism, we will beat BDS and all the efforts against Israel, including the efforts to delegitimize it. This is the 40th anniversary, as you saw last week when the Prime Minister visited Uganda, of the Entebbe rescue, which took the life of the Prime Minister's brother. 40 years ago, the world stood in awe on the July 4th weekend as they saw the plane land and the exact duplicate of President Idi Amin's Mercedes drive out with Israeli soldiers inside. Amazing. And they carried out the remarkable rescue. People thought that would put a stop to the era of terrorism. Unfortunately, it didn't. The world has to make a commitment that in this 40th anniversary year, we will stand against terrorism. We will give no quarter to terrorism. Those who support it, those who aid it, those who abet it, those who engage in it, have to know that they will meet in Entebbe every time they do it. This is also going to be the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War in 1967 and of the reunification of Jerusalem, the freeing of Jerusalem, the uniting of Jerusalem. There are those who still today refuse to accept this reality. How many of you know what has been going on in UNESCO? The United Nations Education and Social blah, 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 blah. They don't know what it stands for. Exactly. They have been meeting for the last 2 years, planning and plotting. And it started in a relatively innocent way, and then they had a meeting of ISESCO, which is the Islamic equivalent with UNESCO representatives sitting there. And they made a decision that from now on, the holiest sites of the Judeo-Christian history and tradition, known by their names for thousands of years, the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, the Temple Mount, Rachel's Tomb, the Cave of the Patriarchs, would from now on be known by their Muslim names. But at least they said they will be hyphenated so that the Western Wall would be Western Wall hyphen Al-Buraq's Wall, named for Muhammad's horse, who ascended from there supposedly after him, one end or the other. And that Rachel's tomb for 3,000 years called Kitab Rachel in every Arab, every Muslim, every UN, every League of Nations document. Rachel's tomb would now be known as the mosque for Muhammad's driver, and so on with the other places. And everybody said, this is ridiculous. What does it mean? I said, you're dismissing something very important. This is a plan. This is a plot. For 50 years, they're now waiting to exercise it. Because the idea of Jerusalem being reunited under Jewish sovereignty, open to Christians, Muslims, Jews, to everyone, is an anathema to them. It refutes their predictions that the Jewish people would disappear. And now they found the vehicle through UNESCO. How many of you read about it? How many of you reacted to it when you saw in the newspapers the reports that they had passed by overwhelming votes, resolutions declaring that the names were to be hyphenated? But they didn't stop there. In Berlin this past summer, and now again 2 months ago, and again this week in Istanbul, they have removed the Jewish and Christian names. And now the sites most sacred to you and to us now carry only the Muslim names. 3,800 years of Jewish history, 2,000 years of Christian tradition wiped away. And when I asked the French foreign minister, he said, oh, you don't want to change the status quo. I told him, you did more to change the status quo of Jerusalem in my youth signing onto that resolution than Israel did in 60 years. You did more to underline the future of Jerusalem. What will you tell your grandchildren, I asked him, when they ask you, how could you do this? How could you take away our history, our tradition, our beliefs? How could you deny us access to the most sacred places we have? He said, I have to think about it. This week in Istanbul, they were going to do it. But God said, you know what? I've had enough of it. And the meeting, because of the revolution, had to be postponed. Why would they do this? With all the problems in the Middle East, with all the disruption, all the economic dislocation, all the suffering of the people, why would they devote all this attention to this seemingly this ridiculous exercise? Does it change the reality? God assured us of this reality 2,000 years ago. They can't change that. But what is the point? It is because they know that if you take away our past, you take away our future. They understand it better than many of us, that if you cut off our roots and you say there was no temple, so Jesus couldn't have gone there with the money changers. There was no Western Wall. This was not Rachel's tomb. The Cave of the Patriarchs was a mosque and doesn't belong to you. Then what is the inheritance, the Yerusha that we leave our children? So they are trying to take away our future by taking away our past. Judaism teaches us that we have to look back in order to look forward. Judaism puts an emphasis on history, on a dynamic of history, to teach us that only those who learn the lessons of the past are prepared to meet the challenges of the future. Only those of us who look back can meet and understand the chaotic world in which we live and understand what our responsibility is. Only those who are rooted in our history and understand and learn the lessons from our forefathers and foremothers, their successes and their failures, can spare future generations those trials and tribulations. Winston Churchill once said, the further back you look, the further ahead you will see. Our sages taught it to us 1,000 years earlier. That's why all our holidays are geared not just to a ritual observance, but to being experiential, that we experience what previous generations went through. And one of the lessons of history is that you can't be a bystander. Obadiah said, you stood on the other side and did nothing, you are with the enemy. Martin Luther King said, we're not going to be judged by the attacks of our enemy, but by the silence of our friends. How many times does the Bible repeat this message to us? When Moses was told that 2.5 tribes wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan, he said, your brothers will go to war and you think you will sit here in peace? And they all joined because they understood there would be no peace for them. You cannot stand on the sidelines when we see this effort to uproot our history and our traditions, to deny future generations their proper inheritance. God found the antidote. Because every shovel going into the land, into the ground in Jerusalem, when they built the light railroad, when they excavate for a new building, every single thing, every single shovel uncovers our past and just reminds us. God is saying to us, look, here is the proof. He shows us a little rock with a carving that somebody who went to the temple did of the menorah. Or the golden ball from the bottom of a priest's garment as he walked over to the temple. Or the sword of a Roman soldier. Or the ritual baths, or the quarters, or all the things that they found, including the place where David fought Goliath, exactly as the Bible describes them. The Bible is the GPS in Jerusalem. In Magdala, they found what is called in the Bible a machta, is to be a sacred implement that was used in the temple. We've seen portrayals of it in pictures, but they actually found one which somebody probably leaving Jerusalem took with them and hid. You see it in Jewish heart, now you see it in reality. We found the 6th century synagogue just 2 weeks ago, and in it were huge mosaics. One of an ark with 2 of every animal being brought into it. Huge, colorful portrayals. And one mosaic of the creation of the world. So for those who deny and those who say you guys have made this up, this is the testimony from almost 2,000 years ago. An eyewitness drew it so that we should see it and tell the world the truth. There's so much to be said about the world in which we live. I deal every day in the real world, and the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. It's being overdone. You know, they tell the story of a man who was driving in a car, and an old man drove up next to him in Israel at a light. And he was driving a Maserati, and the old man came up on a little scooter. And he said, "That's a beautiful car." He said, "Yes, it cost me $250,000. He said, "How fast does it go?" He said, "Well, in a half a minute I can get it to 60, in a minute to 100, in a minute and a half to 150. He said, "That's a beautiful car. Can I look inside?" So he leans over and he swirls around in the car, and the doc says, "You know, when the light changes, I'm going to show him what this car can do." The light turned green, he took off, he saw the old man left behind, and all of a sudden, the old man passes him. So he floors it. And he goes faster and again, sees the old man left behind. A minute later, the old man passes him again. He's really furious. And he goes as fast as he can, and he sees the old man coming up and smashes into the back of the Lamborghini. The doctor jumps out and says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" He said, "Yes, could you untie my suspenders from your mirror?" I'll wait till he gets to the back of the room. That's how it feels that we see the things that we thought were left in the back, in the rearview mirror. Have all of a sudden come back again and are smashing into us. We see the efforts to build empires, the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, the Wahhabi Empire, the Muslim Brotherhood Empire, efforts to create hegemony. And if you think of their designs, that Iran today says for the first time we control 4 Arab capitals. We have Beirut, and we have Baghdad, and we have Sana'a, and we have Damascus. That Turkey talks about building the same empire and reaching out through Syria. That's why they're fighting there, because they both need it. And to reach through that to the Persian Gulf. And if you look at all of their aspirations, you recognize there's one little thing blocking them, whose name hardly fits on the map. It's what stands up against the forces of tyranny and destruction. It's why Khomeini says you have to annihilate Israel, because as long as Israel's there, his evil plans can't be implemented. And we have to learn to take the threats of dictators seriously. Leaders of democracies lie, dictators tell the truth. They tell you what they're going to do. We just don't listen. Hitler told us everything he would do when he wrote Mein Kampf in 1923, but nobody listened. Stalin told us what he would do. Khomeini is telling us what he wants to do. He puts it in Hebrew letters on his missiles. He says, death to America. First we destroy America, then we destroy Israel. And what do? We celebrate now the first anniversary of the deal. What benefit did we derive? They shot off the fourth time ballistic missiles. They continue to support terrorism in ever greater amounts. They have 40,000 agents in South America today. Yes, Iran, 40,000 agents working because they found out they can fight America from across a border and not from 8,000 miles away. The nuclear weapon is only the end. They now have the delivery system, the weaponization, they have the network being created, and seek to undermine not only the region but the world. Ask any African leader. You know who has learned the lesson? The leaders of Arab countries, who tell me, we pray for Israel. We'll condemn them, but we pray for them. Because they have come to see that the source of stability in the Middle East, that the source of hope is not the Western states, but little Israel. When the Prime Minister visited Africa, 8 heads of state came. But I can tell you of a dozen more who contacted me and asked that they wanted to be included. We see the new initiatives in the Eastern Mediterranean. We see the Arab countries quietly, clandestinely reaching out to Israel. We see 50,000 new seats being added on flights from China. We see the 30,000 new seats every year from India. We see the growth of Israel's connections from Asia, Africa, around the world. What happened to the predictions of Israel's isolation? Israel stood up and did the right thing and showed the world. How do you fight terrorism? Not with mealy-mouthed words, but by showing them resolute action. There has to be determination. You can't stand by. When people come to stab your people or kill your people, you act. The U.S.-Israel relationship, thank God, is strong because the American people see through the lies, and more than 2/3 stand with Israel. We have a big job to do. We don't take it for granted, especially about young people who've been fed all of the lies, all of the distortions, all of the misrepresentations. We see the BDS campaign on campuses. It's not about occupation. Ask any of the BDS people if they would accept Israel in the pre-67 lines. Yes. Because the real enemy is Israel's existence. It's about 1948, not 1967.
Yeah, that's right.
It's about Israel's right to exist and the Jewish people to have a homeland. Nobody says Israel's perfect, but it can measure up to any country in the world. And what is the one country the United Nations singles out for condemnation and criticism? That the Commission on Women condemns one country, not those that mutilate young women, not those that deny them the right to drive, to have jobs, and to have an existence. Israel, with more women in the Knesset than any country. Who does the World Health Organization single out to condemn? The one country that takes in thousands of people from Syria, including soldiers who will go back to fight them one day. That treats the family of Khania, Hamas, and of Abbas's brother comes from Qatar, and thousands of Gazans come to be treated. And builds field hospitals in Nepal and Haiti. What's the one country the World Health Organization deems to condemn? The one that's helping all over Africa to fight AIDS and to fight diseases. Yes. It's Israel. The Human Rights Council has those great bastions of human rights, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, sitting in judgment of the one democracy. Is it any wonder that it is condemned 7 times in resolutions automatically and more than 20 resolutions in the General Assembly? This is the United Nations. What have they learned in the 70 years since its creation? What have they learned from that awful period when the world said they didn't know? We know now that they knew everything. There's a book that just came out this week, and it depicts the pictures that soldiers brought home, the German soldiers sent home, of the pictures they took of the concentration camps, of the murder, of the burning of bodies, of what they did, the massacres that they carried out. And they would send the pictures home because they couldn't develop them. So the families knew the story that they didn't know in Germany. It's a lie. And it was a lie that the Allies didn't know. They had broken Nazi codes. They didn't want the world to know. They didn't want the Nazis to know. And they tried to hide the lie for 60 years. So it wasn't that they didn't know, they didn't want to know. Today, we know everything. There is no cloak of ignorance to hide our shame. It is why we need CUFI to show the truth, to shed the light on the lies, the distortions, for you, each of you, to become a messenger, an ambassador of truth, to go out there and tell the world, because the world's existence depends on it. It cannot exist on lies. I told once a story, and perhaps Pastor will remember. How many of you, we just read this in the Bible, so it came to mind. How many of you can name the 10 scouts, because in Washington we don't talk about spies, the 10 scouts that Moses sent who came back with a negative report? No. Who can name the 10? Who can name the 2 who came back with a positive report? Yeah. Who? Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb. That's the lesson of history. Those who speak against Israel are written off to history. Those who stand up for Israel are remembered forever. The sin of the spies was not that they just came back and they had a but in their description. It was because God promised them a good land, and they didn't believe it.
That's right.
God promised us a great land. We see it emerging today. Now all of us have to demonstrate the faith that we believe in it, and by working for it, by getting involved in it. When Noah built the ark, and he put all those big animals in the ark and all those planks, he knew that they couldn't hold them. No pieces of wood could hold the elephants, hippopotami, and all those other things. It was a miracle by God. So if God was already doing the miracle, why didn't he build the whole ark? Why didn't he make the ark? Because God wants us to do our part first. He wants us to make the investment. He wants us to make the effort. He'll make sure it's a success, but we have to do our part. The miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea couldn't take place until Nachshon put his foot in the water and said, I'm going to risk my life. The leap of faith that is asked of each of us, all of us who get it, your being here shows you get it, you understand, you know the mission you have. And now you have to carry it out. This is the charge to us today, especially because it's so complex. We have to educate the world. This is a time of no patience. Nobody wants to know about history. Nobody wants to know about facts. Young people want everything now, peace now, food now, everything immediately. It's not the way the world works. It's an age where people don't want to take responsibility. It drives me crazy when young people say, it is what it is. And I tell them, oh no, it is what you make of it. It is what it is says you have no responsibility. You can't change anything. So now, we have a responsibility. I want to look back as God did after the days of creation, say by Yarkin Tov, that we can look back and say, it is indeed good. God didn't need to compliment himself. I mean, he's the height of perfection. He had to say, hey, I did a good job. No, it was a message to us. That when things are so bleak and when things look so complex and so terrible, remember, look at all the good that has been created. Look at the amazing communities, the network that you have built of millions of people who care, what we have built in terms of American support, what stands around the world to stand with Israel, and look at the miracle that Israel is. Tell anybody that it's the size of Connecticut, they think you're insane. It's a world power. And our good deeds never die. This is the lasting testament to all of you, to all your good work, is that the contributions that you have made and the work through the leadership of the Hagans, we can look back and say, Vayar Tov, and that we will beat the real enemies, ignorance, apathy, and indifference. Those are the dangers, and the American people are falling into that trap. Your job is to educate them, to bring them out of it, to declare never again will a Jew or will a Christian have to face the kind of slaughters that we have seen in recent years. Never again will innocent people be subjected to terrorism and terror, to the lies and distortions, because you have the strongest weapon of all, the truth. Go out and spread it.